Hello, everyone. Are there any S.T.A.L.K.E.R fans here? That's good. If I say something wrong, you will be able to correct me. So, considering this is the last day of the conference and one of the concluding talks, I really appreciate you visited this talk, and if you specifically came to listen something about S.T.A.L.K.E.R, it's even more appreciated. So, let's get through what are we going to talk during the next 40 minutes. Today, I'm giving an extended version of my original talk about artifacts. And what does this mean? It means that there will be twice as much of content and trivia and other background stories. So the chances you will hear something today or see something interesting today are slightly increased. So let me introduce myself a little bit more first. My name is Yegor Ostapenko. I am the game designer from GSC Game World, and this is how I looked before I started working in AAA games. Actually, May 15th was the 10th anniversary for me working in this amazing industry. And during this time, I had an opportunity to participate in different indie projects, in a publishing house, and in outsource. And while working on S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, I had an opportunity to contribute to a vast variety of features, including world building, items, HUD, PDA, settings, and some other things. But today, I would like to focus on a very iconic feature of S.T.A.L.K.E.R games, the artifacts. And especially, what was the process behind the delivery of this feature, and what is more important, how I was able to do this on time. This experience can be upscaled or downscaled, so it will be applicable to literally any project, no matter how big or small. But before we start, let's make sure that everyone is on the same page and knows what artifacts actually are when it comes to S.T.A.L.K.E.R universe. Artifacts are items in the world, and they spawn in the anomalies that are scattered around the zone. There are 4 types of artifacts, including thermal, chemical, electric, and by the way, this is the electric artifact you are seeing there, and gravitational. I will use the very same color coding throughout the presentation, so hopefully it makes sense to you. Based on the type and rarity of the artifacts, they grant their owners different bonuses, and those bonuses help them survive in the zone. Like, for example, a common gravitational artifact increases maximum weight, and it affects how much you can carry as a character. And this makes them, all the artifacts, very valuable. And one of the core reasons for stalkers to venture deeper inside the zone. And if not for the sake of the artifacts themselves, then surely for big check from the trader. However, finding an artifact is not easy, since they are. It is required to have specific equipment to do so. In S.T.A.L.K.E.R games, those are called detectors. And also, they are not static. They strafe, so when you find one, you need to catch one first. So let's summarize it. Stalkers have to explore the zone. They have to look for anomalies and decide if they are willing to risk their lives and try to get those artifacts. But once they get the taste of the effects of these artifacts, the urge grows to find more and try to build the perfect combination. Not to mention, they all look really nice, and you just want to collect them all. So, my congratulations, now you are all novice experts in artifacts. Now let's talk about what it takes to deliver artifacts as a feature. First of all, you need to understand why do you need this? Like, what is the purpose of this feature? What experience you want your players to have? With artifacts, our main goal was to recreate a similar experience that was available in the original S.T.A.L.K.E.R games. This meant that, thankfully, we didn't have to start from scratch. At the same time, we had to re-evaluate the existing content and decide what stays and what goes and how much new content we need. So, with artifacts for S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, goal number 1 was to understand and calculate the overall amount of artifacts needed for the world as big as S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 has, which was kind of big task. Goal number 2 was to decide on the balance between old and new artifacts. And goal number 3 was to really well document everything. So all the documentation had, for each artifact, had the names, all the content required to develop the feature further, and all the logic needs to be described. So everyone in the team is on the same page. Goal number 4 was to deliver all artifacts, so they would be ready for playtests and possible tweaks. And after all goals were set and pre-production eventually started, finished, it's time to start production process. First things first, we need draft balance. We need to distribute such things like type, rarity, price between all the artifacts. In this example, we have 6 common artifacts. All of those belong to electric category, with 5 of them coming from the original games and 1 completely new. Also, we had to do the draft balance of effects that these artifacts grant to their users. Here we have the very same electric artifacts and 3 categories of effects distributed between them. The first 2 categories, they encompass the positive effects, and the third one is a negative one. Each category includes effects of different powers. The higher their value is, the more power the effect has. And since we're talking about common artifacts, they offer minimum bonus. Also, they are quite harmful, so don't use them too much. Once the draft balance for effects was done, everyone involved in production had basic information to start the work. And that would be a concept art phase. So we could have a bunch of 2D images and enable all further work when it comes to visuals. Once that was done, the next step was passing this concept to the 3D department to model a mesh and create a material for it. Later on, we had to give artifacts some VFX love and to decide which one of them have to emit certain lights. Maybe they need something special, some special content. So this was a really important phase. And after previous stages were ready, the results could be rendered into the icon that could be later used in the inventory. When those elements were in place, it was a high time to start writing fitting names and descriptions for the artifacts. And final touch was integrating all these assets to config files and blueprints so the feature can be playable in the game itself. Just in case you didn't know, this is Unreal Engine. Sometimes, though, we had to rework certain artifacts for different reasons. For example, this yummy-looking, nail-ridden metal plate artifact, fittingly called chocolate, looked like this initially. And as you can see, the change is pretty dramatic. But sometimes changes like this are necessary in order to keep the quality of the content on a high level. It's not enough just to make the asset look cool. It's important to take into consideration how well it will blend in the game itself. You got to answer questions like, will it be visible in the grass? Can you see it nighttime? Should it rotate upon impact? Does it taste good? Apparently, the region chocolate didn't get a stamp of approval from the art team. But they were happy with the updated version. So, as you can see, things don't always go according to plans. And I will share a few cases regarding this a little bit later. But before we continue, a quick question to you guys. Based on the pipeline I just showed you, how many developers do you think are required to deliver one single artifact? Any wild guesses? 15. We have 15, we have 5. 2, 3, 8, 4. Okay, please remember your answers. We will come back to this a little bit later after the next section. Let's switch to it, and it will be about the delivery process itself. And specifically, what steps you can take to increase chances for success. So after the pre-production phase is done, it's time to start delivering. Jesse, we have to cook. First, you need to allocate people who will make it happen. And for artifacts, we required game designers, obviously, a programmer, economy designer, 2D, 3D, VFX artists, S.T.A.L.K.E.R, UI, sound guy, animator, QA, localization manager, and a writer, which makes it 13 people in total. Also, we need an art director and creative and game design leads to approve the work, so it kind of extends the list to extra 3 people. Of course, some content is required to be done just once. So, for example, sounds for all artifacts are the same, so once done, you don't have to come back to it. You don't also need to develop unique behavior for each artifact. So when the general logic is ready and tested, dev work is done. The same goes for animations, because they are mainly connected to the character more than artifacts. And finally, balancing is not connected to content delivery at all. QA, at the same time, they don't test each piece of content individually. It makes more sense to test when more of it is ready. And S.T.A.L.K.E.R is required for very specific tasks, not always. And leads, they don't approve just content pieces by pieces, they approve it in a bulk. And basically, this reduces the core team to 7 people. 7 people are required to deliver each artifact after the general job is done. So any of you who thought that it is between 7 and 16 people are correct. My congratulations. But let's get to the allocation of required personnel. The best option, of course, is to ask for colleagues who have a good understanding what the feature is. Sometimes, though, it's not possible because in the big teams, people multitask. In indie teams, people multitask. So sometimes they are busy and they can't help you. However, the next step is to plan your delivery. Of course, it makes sense to split your delivery into milestones. When it comes to artifacts, the team had to deliver 76 artifacts. And they were split into 3 logical groups. The biggest one included 69 artifacts that could be repeatedly found in the zone. As I mentioned before, we have 4 types of artifacts defined by their nature: thermal, chemical, electric, and gravitational. Okay. This one is good. The second group was reserved for 6 unique artifacts, also known as ARC artifacts. They had an alternative production pipeline, as their background was different than for other artifacts. While most of the artifacts in the zone are an abstraction, like this artifact over there, ARC artifacts represent real-world items with supernatural abilities, just like the bolt over there. Production-wise, this meant that they have reused the meshes that have been already created by 3D artists for other purposes. Also, some of them required 2 different inventory icons to indicate charged and uncharged state. Also, sometimes with ARC artifacts, an additional step was required to achieve a desired appearance. For this purpose, extra materials were created by the tech art department. But let's go back to the third group of artifacts. It included a single artifact, which was also unique, but could be acquired only through the main storyline. The number 1 goal was to deliver content for the biggest group, 69 artifacts. So for each milestone, the team aimed to deliver all content for at least 5 artifacts of each type, making it 20 artifacts in total. And just in case the color coding for artifacts types faded away a little bit, here is a handy legend. Going back to the milestones, the first 3 milestones were dedicated to delivering most of the content, while the 4th milestone was split between remaining artifacts, possible polish, and reworks. Each milestone took about a month and resulted in integration, QA testing, and merging of the new branch of artifacts, of the new batch of artifacts into the main project branch. So anyone in the studio could use this content and give feedback. Before we continue, here's a few details on how we managed to test 70+ items, but to bulk check their appearance, effects, naming and descriptions, well, basically everything that we've done before. There are a few ways to make this happen, and those of you who had similar experience know them. The most obvious one is to create a test level and place each item individually, so when the scene is launched, you can approach them and test them one by one. The alternative and less painful way, no, I think it's even more painful way, is to spawn all required items one by one into inventory using the debug tool, or make someone on the dev team make spawn all items button for this specific group of items. What I did though was creating a custom item generator prototype that included all the artifacts and was assigned to be spawned in this specific container. So after all items were spawned, I could easily transfer them to my inventory, and this was much faster than spawning them individually, creating a test level, or bothering the dev team. Sometimes, as you can imagine, issues were found, and the milestone that followed picked up any technical debt, including planned but unfinished content and changes that were required to be introduced. The key for successful completion of these milestones was effective communication, and I will share a few tips that can make it easier for you. To deliver a lot of content and meet deadlines, you need a way to effectively communicate with your team. It's one thing when all your team members are sitting in the same room, you have a whiteboard, and can easily communicate with everyone during the business hours. Where is my slide? However, you might find yourself in a situation when some of your team members work from different locations, they may have different time zones. Sometimes you work in the big company and you're split between floors and it's harder to do what you did before. Sometimes it's the mix of everything, so it's even more difficult. So whenever you're not able to use a whiteboard to track your progress and talk to everyone directly on a daily basis, you might need the following unless you already do. First, a task manager software of your choosing to populate a backlog for your team. Something like Jira or maybe something simpler. And of course, an app for instant communication. To make it clear, emails are not quick, as most people don't have a habit of checking their inboxes regularly. Also, leaving comments in task managers is also not quick, just like leaving them in documents, as notifications end up in the inbox as well, in the emails. What is quick, though, is Slack. At least this is what we have used when we worked on the artifacts. Anyway, once you're done with the infrastructure, it's really handy to start the introduction call with your team members so you can all discuss what are the tasks, what needs to be done. You just need to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So when everyone knows what is the scope, what are the tasks, you need to convey and explain what is the scope of the current milestone, what are the responsibilities of each member. And after the meeting ends, it's very helpful and I would say mandatory to publish a recap where you will record the results of your meeting in the text form. And don't forget to tag everyone involved so they have no excuse later on. When tasks are populated and goals for milestones are set, observe the process and highlight the progress. For example, posting some materials that have been already done can boost morale and show everyone what progress has been done. Let's say your milestone lasts 1 month. This means that you can review the activity of your team each week on Monday, for example. This way you can address problems. Maybe someone will report some blockers, so you can address them. Also, a word of advice, using emojis is not just cool, it's also visually very easy to read, and you can, in a better way, make everyone understand what is going on. If you realize that there is a possibility that some content is not going to be delivered on time, don't hesitate to ping people. Just try to be nice about it, because everyone is busy. So we already discussed how things need to be done. Let's talk about how things happen in real life. As promised before, I'm going to share 3 cases as an example. The first case is connected with naming of the artifacts. As I have mentioned earlier, I joined the company in 2021, and this means that the game had already been in development for some time. And when I was assigned as a delivery owner of the artifacts, there was already some work done, including template names for 69 artifacts. 29 of them originated from previous games, and we didn't want to change their names because of the lore reasons. But there were still 40 new artifacts to handle. There is no particular reason for this slide, it just looks cool. But let's use this opportunity to explain the problem within the case. All these template names were included in the config file that was used by the engine to spawn actual artifacts in the game. Apart from that, they were also used in the localization tool and some quest blueprints, which meant changing the names in the source, in the config file, could result in issues with artifacts in the game itself. And since we didn't want to risk, a decision was made to leave all draft names as is. The only thing that changed is their final name in the localization tool after narrative designers picked the right and correct names. Still, the solution came with a price, as we had to simultaneously operate with draft names, final names, and also with technical naming of the 3D meshes, as they use their own naming policy. And whenever a team member needed to ask a question, maybe think like from other departments which are maybe, for example, not too informed about the feature, it was a bit of a hassle to understand which specific artifact they talked about. So the bottom line here is that agreeing upon and using the same naming policy for all departments as early as possible will save you a lot of time and nerves in the future. And while we are at it, a few related stories. Initially, to pick names for new artifacts, we planned to run an all-company poll, so each member of the team could suggest their own names, because this way we thought maybe they will sound like something that stalkers in the zone would call them. So we wanted artifacts named be based on their appearance. But due to the time limits, only 4 people were involved in this process. A writer who suggested the names, me, and our leads. Maybe it's for the best, as it's quite hard to pick only one name from dozens and not to hurt anyone's feelings in the process. Next story. One of the definitions of done for artifacts was writing documentation for each artifact with all necessary information about it, like visuals, type, rarity, lore, if applicable, and use cases. This task was completed, but as you might have heard, we had a fire in the office at some point of development. Long story short, only a fraction of all documents survived. Still, by that time, our writer already used them to create fitting names for all artifacts. I know this meme is overused, but I think I have a really good reason to use it. Also, thankfully, I had a Google Sheet I used to track progress over artifacts, and it included all vital information. So the bottom line here is backup everything as much as possible. It's the way to go. Let's take a look at the next case now, regarding effects of the artifacts. Just like with the artifact names, there were also draft effects assigned to them. Here you can see our good old friends, electric artifacts. They are common type, and they are also accompanied by a few more uncommon types. All of them have positive and negative effects on players. For illustrative purposes, let's take a look at the battery artifact. When I started to work on artifacts, it already had draft positive effect, which provided players with some basic resistance to electricity and applied a certain radiation debuff. Also, this artifact was present in all previous games, but its effects underwent certain evolution with time. As you can see, it all started with some alternative like powers, like shock, stamina, yeah. This is the evolution between the series, and it started as a positive effect on the artifact, and with the same electricity resistant bonus as was in the draft. Then it acquired alternative powers and affected stamina ever since, with radiation debuff on top of that. So after I researched all these things and how the effects changed over time, I found certain patterns which helped me to come up with the concept I decided to follow. To be more exact, I wanted effects to make sense based on the type of the artifact and to let artifacts override effects of each other. So it was possible to come up with a combination of positive buffs only. When it comes to buffs, artifacts found in electric anomalies would grant character additional resistance to electric damage. The same goes for fire and chemical types of artifacts. While gravity would give a buff to maximum weight of the items, character could carry without debuffs. Also, each type of artifact, except chemical ones, was assigned with an additional positive effect that was logically connected to the nature of the artifact. An example, artifacts spawned in electric anomalies would slow down the stamina consumption, while thermal artifacts would stop bleeding in the best traditions of Rambo movies. Regarding the negative effects, all types of artifacts, again except chemical ones, had the debuff of radiation being applied to unprotected characters. The power of this negative effect would decrease based on the rarity of the artifact. So the most common artifacts would be the most dangerous, while the rarest one would have minimal debuff. At the same time, chemical artifacts had no additional buffs, which was a debuff in a way itself, as the amount of artifacts was limited to 5. This worked pretty well on paper. However, later on, it appeared that players preferred not to use artifacts in the early game. The reasons for this are the following. You need to look for them, and their spawn is not guaranteed. Also, the amount of chemical anomalies that override radiation debuff is limited due to the logic of their placement. You would expect chemical anomalies to be spawned inside certain buildings or maybe caves, so not every place is good for those. Also, anomaly damage decreases the durability of the equipment. And while players try to catch the artifact, this can affect their gear, and fixing it is pricey. This made us think about maybe re-evaluating the design, so we are considering certain changes, like removing debuffs from some of the common artifacts to increase chances they could be used early in the game. And also maybe act an extra positive effect to all artifacts, including chemical ones. So what would be the lesson here? The first one would be that features cannot be developed in a vacuum. In this particular case, the world-building process should have been taken into consideration, so it could have a bigger impact on the way effects were designed and distributed. Also, more play testing before release could highlight this problem. But as it happens, there is never enough time to do all the things you want. Before we get to the next case, a bit of trivia. Initially, the description of the artifacts were intended to be more specific, so the players could understand the effects they will apply better. Still, there was a possibility that effects will change in the future, and they did. And we asked writers to avoid this. So the description and effect lists were not developed in the same time. Another piece of trivia regarding effects is the reason behind indicating the power with text and not numbers. After the balance team went through the bonus effects for artifacts, the numbers were tweaked in a way that they looked really insignificant, even though they made absolute sense balance-wise. So would you like to get a 0.2 bonus to whatever? Would this look significant enough? Probably not. So we talked and decided it would be more informative to replace those numbers with text instead. For artifacts, we didn't have to deal with effects and their power at all, as we deliberately decided not to show effects, so players had an opportunity to discover those themselves. However, this time we did mention the effects in this description, not in a very specific way, but just to give a hint. Another piece of trivia is, not sure if you are aware of this, but at some point our build leaked, as it was kindly reported by PC Gamer back in the day. Won't lie, this wasn't the best day of my life or the team's life, but what do they say? If life gives you lemons, make a lemonade. So what I did was the following. I looked for, let's call it, early feedback to see if there was anything useful there. And this exercise actually helped test some of the theories we had within the team. We have already covered naming and effects issues. Let's wrap this up with the third case. It's not directly connected with the content production, but has roots in it. In S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, you are able to take a closer look at any artifact you find in the zone. There are two ways to do so. The first one is from the inventory. You can right-click on the artifact you want to check out and just click Examine Artifact. The other one is from the HUD. So whenever you pick the artifact, the notification pops up, and you can hold the input, and the thing you see on the screen happens. From the first glance, this looks like a little tiny fun feature to implement, but it required extra work from game designers, animators, devs, UI, UX, localization, QA, and it offered mostly aesthetical value to the player. However, lack of an easy way to investigate artifacts closely meant that one of the key elements of the game that required hundreds of hours to be made wasn't properly showcased in the game itself. And even though you could kind of take a closer look at the artifact while picking it up, this short demonstration didn't do much justice to the feature. One of the compromises for this issue was an artifact room in S.T.A.L.K.E.R, which is one of the locations in the game. In case you wondered what S.T.A.L.K.E.R stands for, it stands for Scientific Institute of Research of the Chernobyl Anomalous Area. Unfortunately, this room could hold only 39 of 65 artifacts made for the game. I mean, like the regular ones, not the ARC artifacts and the Quest one. The other thing that didn't really go according to plan with this room is the ambient light emitted by the artifacts. And as you can see from the test video, each artifact has a very specific light emission. So the idea was to pick up the most beautiful, based on my subjective opinion, of course, and rare artifacts and place them within the room in a very specific order to form a light pattern. Something like Christmas lights to create a mood of getting into a miracle land where everything is possible. Unfortunately, due to a very unique light situation in S.T.A.L.K.E.R overall, the light emitted by artifacts located in the room had to be adjusted. And it turned out to be not as magical as I intended it to be. Eventually, thanks to the enthusiasm of a group of interested people, the artifact overview feature made it into the release version of the game after all. So instead of just getting a closer look at artifacts in sterile S.T.A.L.K.E.R environment, players are able to get a proper look and have a unique experience of gazing at an artifact they just hunted down. And here goes a very important lesson. Before deciding how much time and resources you are ready to invest into producing a content, you need to understand its value for the player and the game itself first. Thank you for your time. It was a pleasure to have this talk in front of so many peers. And if you have any questions that won't make it into this section, you're welcome to write me something or ping me on LinkedIn.
We'll still have plenty more time for questions if you like. Hi. First of all, a huge fan of the artifacts feature. It inspired me in my work outside of GameDev where I design LARPs. and I created many artifacts, inspired by what you made in the newest installment of S.T.A.L.K.E.R. So my questions will be a little bit specific because I really enjoy the feature. So why not go for a totally new subtype of artifacts? You stick with the 4 that were present in previous games, and I kind of get it because they are connected to the anomalies that are around the zone, but also there are plenty of other effects, for example, the psychic or psionic effects that are present, and maybe instead of expanding the number of artifacts from, I think it was like around 30 in Call of Pripyat to around 70 here, you could have maybe gone into another subtype altogether, like psychic artifacts.
Well, thank you for the question. It's a good question. With S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, we had to be careful because we had the legacy of the games that have been around for years, and community got used to certain things. So we had, at one point, try and save things that worked, and at the same time try to do something new. So this was a safe way to make this happen, but I'm not saying that in the future this won't change.
Sure. I mean, I'm one of those guys from the community, but I guess my way of thinking is kind of make everything bigger and more interesting.
Yeah, well, this is very good point.
But I do give you another compliment. I love the Circa room. It was wonderful, walking down there for the first time, you see all of those artifacts, it's just wonderful. A second question, again, very, very specific. Why debuff the goldfish artifact?
Oh, you mean like from the previous games?
Yes, I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna get it for the first time. It's such a good artifact, and then you take it, and it's just, I think, like +4 to the kilograms that you can carry.
Yeah. Oh. Well, the thing with the older artifacts from the previous games is that they have been there already, so we kind of tweaked there and debuffed them a little bit, so they're not doing the same, because previously, for example, Compass artifact was a quest artifact, yep, and it was unique. And now it's another one of those. So instead, we introduced ARC artifacts to add this flair of unpredicted and interesting effects that can be applied to player.
Sure. All right, great, thanks.
Thank you.